Monk's Mood. Wow.
Masterful.
It's that is quite a piece. It breaks all the rules, and just a couple of things. My first impressions are that on that opening solo introduction that he does, it's about almost 3 minutes long.
Right.
The way he chooses which notes to sustain and which ones not to sustain. That some have this kind of quick attack and then others resonate. And that use of the sustain is almost like added notes to the solo. And maybe I'm just because I'm very heightened listening, at this point. But that really struck me, the way he was using sustain as a musical device.
Yeah, well, that's a real big part of the art form that he's presenting. He's presenting you with these weird is a bad word, but unique resonances. He's taking you on a journey. The composition's designed to take you on a journey. Then the way he arranges it, and especially the way he voices the chords. And sometimes there's a grace note. Sometimes that kind of activates an upper overtone. Sometimes the notes are meant to kind of like thud and sound like they're made out of wood and just sound kind of dead and disappear. Sometimes the whole thing is kind of like a cascading, shimmering, kind of bright sound. And like all these different kind of sounds are coming at you. He does that on the piano.
Right.
It's one thing to do that on a reed or on a trumpet or with your voice, but to make piano notes bend, it's kind of a miracle of modern science that is Thelonious Monk.
Yeah, very, very. And then also compositionally in the way the piece is performed, there's lots of stops and starts, and it doesn't.
Yeah, he does that on purpose. That's his style. He knows it's all mapped out. He knows exactly what he's going to do every bit of the way because he's a total freaking genius. But he does those hesitant moments so you can feel the preponderanceness of it all, so that it draws you in, so that you dig it. You dig, right? And that's what he would say. He's drawing you in, that pause. And then, bam, he delivers this unusual sound you never heard before. And then, when you tear it apart and look at it, you're like, yeah, okay, it's a B-flat 7 with a E major triad on top. It's the polytone tritone Stravinsky chord voiced that way. Yeah, that's what it is. But man, he draws you in. He makes you feel it. It's great.
Yeah, and then the duet that's kind of the centerpiece. I mean, you've got the bass comes in just for a brief.
Yeah, that's Wilbur Ware, of course. Yeah, that's Wilbur Ware right there.
And he kind of comes in at the end of that solo with the kind of thump, 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 and then disappears for the duet in the middle between the sax and the piano, and then. Not until that final section does the bass kind of does it become a trio briefly before the end. Right.
And Train's already showing his influence from the Slonimsky's Thesaurus of Scales and Melodic Patterns. It's this kind of overly numerical book that we'll get into talking about that led to Giant Steps, his chapter 2 is what led into Giant Steps. So we divide the octave into 3 parts. He's using a lot of stuff where you divide the octave into 4 parts, those symmetrical diminished sounds. And that's already not Bird. Bird didn't do those too much. Bird did whole tone stuff, and he did some augmented stuff, but not this kind of symmetrical diminished stuff. So now Train's already adding to the harmonic lexicon of Bird. And then I think one of the virtuoso things here, aside from the amazing tone and how the intonation sits with the piano, is so unique. There's no other tenor player is doing this yet. This is him first. But it's the ornamentation on this piece. The way he gets to the big note. Mm-hmm. There's these little notes that go into it. A lot of them are in the palm key on the upper register of the tenor saxophone. And you hear everybody after Train is influenced by that, myself included. This is how you get that one note to be really beautiful is how you approach that note and kind of give it like a more of a singing quality to it than just like playing the note, right?
Right. That's cool. Yeah. So we've got a second cut from the same album and another famous jazz standard, "Ruby, My Dear."
And this was recorded in July, so that other one was recorded in April '57. So this is later. Now Train's really kind of in the band, and Monk has decided to augment this session with Coleman Hawkins and Shahib Habab and Art Blakey is on drums now, and so this record's got kind of a blowing kind of thing to it, except on this track. This track is going back to the Ruby My Dear Train and Monk ballad thing. This has got some tour de force glissandi. This is great.
Yeah, and I guess, this may be one of, if not Monk's most famous tune. And again, over the years, it's been covered by everybody from Kenny Drew and Bud Powell, Art Farmer, McCoy Tyner, Larry Coryell, all sorts over the years.
Well, and now think about how many giant classics Monk has. Straight No Chaser, Round Midnight, Ruby My Dear, Monk's Mood, it goes on and on. This is amazing. What a great composer. Ask Me Now, But this ballad of all of them captures the Hudson River, New York skyline, Manhattan thing on an autumn day. I don't know. I mean, it's just it's like portraiture. It's beautiful.
All right, let's listen to Ruby My Dear from the album Thelonious Monk and John Coltrane.